a liquidated West Coast collector. But I'd never hoped to see an example like this." Goode gave a hacking chuckle. "You'll do as an arms expert, Mr. Rand," he said, "and you'd win the piggy bank. It seems that after Mr. Fleming bought them, he took them apart and found, just as you say, that the screw threads had been machine cut, and that the working parts were interchangeable from one pistol to the other. There were a lot of papers accompanying them. I have them here, purporting to show that they had been sold by some Austrian nobleman, an anti-Nazi refugee in whose family they had been since the reign of Maximilian II. They are, of course, fabrications. I looked up the family in the Almanach de Gotha. It simply never existed." At first, Mr. Fleming had been inclined to take the view that Rivers had been equally victimized with himself. However, when Rivers refused to take back the pistols and refund the purchase price, he altered his opinion. He placed them in my hands, instructing me to bring suit and also start criminal action. He was in a fearful rage about it, and swore that he'd drive Rivers out of business. However, before I could start the action, Mr. Fleming was killed in that accident, and as he was the sole witness to the fact of the sale, and as none of the heirs was interested, I did nothing about it. In fact, I advised them that action against Rivers would cost the estate more than they could hope to recover in damages." He picked up one of the pistols and examined it. "Now, I don't know what to do about these." "Take them home and hang them over the mantel," Rand advised. "If I'm going to have anything to do with selling the collection, I don't want anything to do with them." Goode was peering at the ivory inlay on the underbelly of the stock. "They are beautiful, and I don't care when they were made," he said. "I think, if nobody else wants them, I'll do just that. Now, Mr. Rand, what had you intended doing about the collection?" "Well, that's what I came to see you about, Mr. Goode. As I understand it, it is you who are officially responsible for selling the collection, and the proceeds would be turned over to you for distribution to Mrs. Fleming, Mrs. Dunmore, and Mrs. Varcek. Is that correct?" "Yes. The collection, although in the physical possession of Mrs. Fleming, is still an undistributed asset." "I thought so." Rand got out Gladys Fleming's letter of authorization and handed it to Goode. "As you'll see by that, I was retained by and only by Mrs. Fleming," he said. "I am assuming that her interests are identical with those of the other heirs, but I realize that this is true only to a very limited extent. It's my understanding that relations between the three ladies are not the most pleasant." Goode produced a short, croaking laugh. "Now there's a cautious understatement," he commented. "Mr. Rand, I feel that you should know that all three hate each other poisonously." "That was rather my impression. Now I expect some trouble from Mrs. Dunmore and/or Mrs. Varcek, either or both of whom are sure to accuse me of having been brought into this by Mrs. Fleming to help her defraud the others. That, of course, is not the case. They will all profit equally by my participation in this. But I'm going to have trouble convincing them of that." "Yes, you will," Goode agreed. "Would you rather carry my authorization than Mrs. Fleming's?" "Yes, indeed, Mr. Goode. To tell you the truth, that was why I came here, for one reason. You would not be obligated in any way by authorizing me to act as your agent. I'm getting my fee from Mrs. Fleming. But I would be obligated to represent her only as far as her interests did not improperly conflict with those of the other heirs, and that's what I want made clear." Goode favored the detective with a saurian smile. "You're not a lawyer, too, Mr. Rand?" he asked. "Well, I am a member of the bar in the state of Mississippi, though I never practiced," Rand admitted. "Instead of opening a law office, I went to the FBI in 1935, and then opened a private agency a couple of years later. But if I had to, which God forbid, I could go home tomorrow and hang out my shingle." "You seem to have had quite an eventful career," Goode remarked, with a queer combination of envy and disapproval. "I understand that until recently you were an officer in the Army Intelligence, too. I'll have your authorization to act for me made out immediately, to list and appraise the collection, and to negotiate with prospective purchasers. And by the way," he continued, "did I understand you to say that you had heard some of these silly rumors to the effect that Lane Fleming had committed suicide?" "Oh, that's what's always heard, under the circumstances," Rand shrugged. "A certain type of sensation-loving mind." "Mr. Rand, there is not one scintilla of truth in any of these scurrilous stories," Goode declared, pumping up a fine show of indignation. "The Premix Company is in the best possible financial condition. A glance at its books, or at its last financial statement, would show that. I ought to know; I'm chairman of the board of directors. Just because there was some talk of retrenchment shortly before Mr. Fleming's death—" "Oh, no responsible person pays any attention to that sort of talk," Rand comforted him. "My armed guard and armored car service brings me into contact with a lot of the local financial crowd. None of them is taking these rumors seriously. Well, of course, nobody wants the responsibility of starting a panic, even a minor one, but people are talking, and it's hurting Premix on the market," Goode gloomed. "And now people will hear of Mrs. Fleming's having retained you, and will assume, just as I did at first, that you are making some kind of an investigation. I hope you'll make a prompt denial if you hear any talk like that." He pressed a button on his desk. "And now I'll get a letter of authorization made out for you, Mr. Rand." End of Chapter 3.